A person's tools say a lot about their values. I heard this in a random YouTube ad, but it is very true. Your body and your mind are two of your greatest tools. What do they say about you? If you say you're a disabled, if you say you are disabled, and so that isn't fair for you, um, is a dulled blade or tool scrap, or can it be sharpened? Just because your tools are in bad shape does not mean that they can't be useful. Get creative if you have to. So, pretty much what I'm saying with this is that, um, the tools at your disposal and the tools that you use say a lot about who you are and what you're capable of. Um, if you don't know how to use your tools, or if your tools are very weak or cheap, or something along those lines, then it's probably because you don't use them very often, right? Because if you used your tools often, you would make sure you got good quality tools that can get the job done, and you have experience using them, and so that is apparent. That they're not brand new, they're worn, they're used, but they're well taken care of, and so they're not worn out, right? And so the two greatest tools that you have and everyone gets is your body and your mind, right? So um, your capacity for thought and the way you use your brain and what your brain is capable of and what you would rate your intelligence as, these are all things that you have set for yourself. Those are you have said, I don't need good tool. I don't need the nice tool. I don't need the better tool. I'll just buy the cheap thing because I don't really need it. I don't use it that often. It's not that important to me. If it breaks, that's fine. I'll just get a new one, right? Rather than quality, you're focused more on just something for the current moment. And I feel like this says a lot about who you are, and really getting into the more like dulled or sharpened blade, right? If you look at someone's tools, right, say they have a knife and the knife is dull, that says a lot about the person, because if it's a dulled knife, that's because they don't take care of it, and they probably don't use it very often, because if they use it very often, then whenever they try to cut something, it'd be a struggle, right? Whenever they do use it, they're like, oh, this knife is just, it really can't cut anything. But they don't think to sharpen it. They don't think, well, I can't solve this problem right now. Maybe I should, try and work on it a little bit, try and figure it out, sharpen my tools, and so the condition of your tools and the type of tools that you have and the abilities of your tools and the amount of tools you have, like your tool set, like what you're capable of doing with your tools, says a lot about who you are. It says a lot about your values. And so when you have dull knives, it tells people, well, you're not very diligent, you don't put a lot of care into your work, and you don't work very often. Because if you did, then you would improve them, right? You would fix them so that you could do the job better. And so it's important to think about this, right? Because when people look at you, they see your body, right? And so when they look at your body, that is one of your tools. That is one of your main tools. Your body is a tool. And when they look at your body and they see a dull blade, they don't see that's not very useful, right? And in some cases, a dull blade is more dangerous than a sharp one. And so you're more likely to cut yourself with a dull blade than a sharp blade. That's like a cooking or a chef tip 101 or something. I don't know. And so when you look at a person that isn't well sharpened, that has a dull blade, and they look like they haven't really taken care of themselves, they don't really apply themselves often, well, you're not going to want to use that tool, are you? Right? And it says a lot about who you are, how you see yourself, and how you see the world. And it gives off the impression of apathy, of a lack of care, and a lack of ambition. And these are not necessarily good qualities for a person. And so when you look at a person, whether you like it or not, these are things that you tell everyone just by your appearance. Because your body is a tool, and how you use it says a lot about who you are. And then when it comes to your mind, it's the same thing, except it's not seen necessarily in your, like, it's not someone's first impression, but after, they're like, okay, well, their body seems all right, but how's their mind? And so that is seen more in your actions, and the way you think. And so maybe you're in good shape, but that doesn't mean that your mind is in good shape, right? Your mind may be a dull blade. It may be unutilized. It may be rusting, right? And so if it's not properly maintained, it's apparent, right? If you're not using your brain, people can tell. And I feel like nowadays a lot of people don't really use their brain, not to its full capacity. A lot of people offload a lot of cognitive capacity onto other people and technology. They say, "Oh, well, I don't need to do this," right? This is the problem with AI, is it's a cognitive offloading. And while I don't think AI is the end of the world, I also don't think that we should rely on it 100% for all of our thought. And as a result, dulling our own blades, right? We need to keep our tools well maintained and in good condition. And just because they're not in good condition right now, maybe they're a little worn, maybe they're got some dings or dents in them, but that doesn't mean the tool is useless, right? And so not everyone has, a quote-unquote perfect body, right? They might be missing some parts, or, they don't have full functionality of their whole body, or they don't have full functionality of their whole brain. That's fine. That doesn't mean that you can't still use the tool, right? If the knife, if you have a knife and the knife loses its handle, it's still a knife. You just got to figure out how to use it. You need to get a new handle for it, or you need to figure out a way of putting it to good use still, because the part of the tool that's functional is still there. You just have to figure out how to use it. And so this is why I don't think that's not an excuse, right? You can't say, well, like, oh, well, it's not fair for me. that's excuses. You can still do a lot even if you're limited. So, um, you know, how you use your tool and the tools that you have say a lot about who you are, right? Because if your tool um, has a few screws missing, that doesn't mean it's still useless. And a person that can still you make the tool functional, even though it's in not necessarily peak condition, says a lot about the person, right? Because it shows determination, it shows will, it shows the fact that um, limitations don't define you. And you know, I think that that's important to show people. And so, your tools say a lot about your values and who you are. So make sure that your most important tools are properly representing who you are. Anyway, peace out.